It seems odd that everyone in Latin America speaks Spanish, but not Brazil. On most continents, such as Europe and Africa, almost every country speaks its own language. Is there a reason why Brazilians speak Portuguese instead of Spanish? Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to create more content about the beauty of Latin America. There is a long history of Spanish colonization in Latin America. Although Spain did not colonize every country equally, some countries, such as French Guiana, were partly colonized by France. It is easy to see several similarities between them, including the language and some aspects of their culture. Brazil, however, is an exception, as the Portuguese colonized the entire country. Spain and Portugal, two of the world's richest and strongest countries at the time, especially when it came to maritime forces, divided the world in two on June 7, 1494, with the help of Pope Alexander VI. Known as the Treaty of Tordesillas, this deal helps us understand how America was colonized. Under this treaty, all lands to the east belonged to Portugal, while all lands to the west belonged to Spain. It is now clear that the world was divided between these countries. But where does the world's center lie? Without a center, how can East and West be defined? Does this division apply to existing countries and kingdoms, such as England? According to the treaty, it was signed on June 7, 1494, in Tordesillas, Spain. The newly discovered lands outside Europe were divided, especially those on the Atlantic Ocean side. In other words, what was the line of demarcation drawn east and west of? It was basically halfway between the Cape Verde Islands, that were Portuguese, and the islands Columbus found, which we now know as Cuba and Hispaniola, but were written in the treaty as Cipangu and Antillia. Today, it appears that Portugal got the worst deal. At the time, nobody knew how big America was, and Portugal wasn't too concerned about the land. Certainly, it would bring them money and power, but Portugal really wanted an easier way to reach India due to its strong market. As a result, Portugal was satisfied with its half. According to the map of the world divided by the Tordesillas Treaty, what is today Brazil was divided between Portugal and Spain. So if that is the case, what is the reason for the lack of Spanish influence in Brazil? The short answer is that Spain was engaged in more productive matters. As you can see, they had almost half of America all to themselves. Their lands were rich, and they had a lot of coastal lands, which were easily accessible by ships. Although Spain got the entire Amazon and many other natural riches, they were difficult to access. Imagine how difficult it was to navigate in the jungle during that time, especially with several native civilizations around. For Spain, the effort was simply not worth it. In 1500, when Pedro Alvares Cabral, a Portuguese exploring the New World under the Portuguese flag, reached what is now known as Bahia, a Brazilian state, he wrote the Portuguese crown an important letter. The letter primarily talks about gold and other natural resources Brazil had to offer. Obviously, that brought Portugal's attention to the territory, something that had never happened before. The new land was explored by many people after Portugal received this letter. After exploring this territory for a long period of time, Portugal colonized the area, with several Portuguese living there at the time. In contrast to the United States, they did not intend to turn Brazil into a strong domain. Instead, they simply desired to have the riches it offered. As the only country in Latin America colonized by Portugal, this is primarily why Brazil speaks Portuguese. Interestingly, the French claimed Rio de Janeiro in 1555. In fact, they even had a little rain in it. It was only in 1560, however, that Portugal took back the territory after fierce fighting. Other countries, such as Holland, also attempted to colonize Brazil. However, Portugal continued to regain it, until Brazil eventually became independent. To learn more about Brazil, click the video on the left and subscribe to our channel so we can grow into one of the biggest channels for educating the public on Latin America.